in light of the fact that we have written lots of words over these last couple of weeks to share with you, we're not going to have a very long or very formal Devar Torah tonight or sermon tonight, although I would suggest that tomorrow morning, if you choose to celebrate Shabbat with us and share in the simcha of Katie becoming bat mitzvah, she will give a very remarkable and important Devar Torah on Ha'azinu, which is our portion for this week. It's very unusual to read Ha'azinu because it's very on this week, because it's very unusual and not very common for the Shabbat after Yom Kippur to not be Sukkot already. There aren't that many years when we actually have a full week, where a full Shabbat, I should say, where it's not right into Sukkot. So Ha'azinu is typically read for Shabbat Shuvah. In the 23 years of my rabbinate, I would say 75% of the time, Ha'azinu will be read for Shabbat Shuvah, and then Nitzavim Vayelech are doubled up, and anyway, the math works out that way, but Katie's going to give a really nice Devar Torah tomorrow morning about the Shir of Moses, the Song of Moses, as he goes up the steeps of Moab, the steps of Moab, to prepare to die. And that is going to be the end, and then we get to go and start all over again. So, this Shabbat, what I thought we would do, given the fact that our sukkah is standing in the courtyard ready to go, is do maybe 5 or 6 Trivial Pursuit kind of questions about Sukkot to make sure that you're prepared for Sukkot, which begins on Sunday night with our service and shmooze. And, beg your pardon? Don't worry about it. We're not going to do cubits. Well, a cubit is from your elbow to the tip of your finger. Thank you very much, Rabbi. It's about half a yard, about 1.5 feet. I'm not doing cubits, but I'm going to do sides in a second. So I'm going to ask some general questions. Make sure you're prepared for Sukkot. It's only 48 hours from now. Again, here at 5:30 on Sunday, we'll have some yummy food. We'll have a brief service. We'll have lots of stuff for the kids, but it's also an adult holiday too. Zman Simchatenu, the time of our rejoicing, begins on Sunday. Given that Zman Simchatenu is also one of the names for Sukkot. So how many names? Give me a couple other names. So we've got Sukkot is one of the names for the holiday. What's another name? Zman Simchatenu, I just told you. And any other names that you can think of? Hechag, the holiday. That's one of the names. Rabbi, do you have another one? Chag HaAsif. That is correct. Now, what's interesting about all of these names, or not interesting if you choose not to be interested by this, is they are all for this holiday that is in many ways the most important of 3 holidays that we call pilgrimage holidays. What are the 3 pilgrimage holidays? You now know that Sukkot is one of them. What are the other 2? I'm sorry, everyone, what? Passover and Shavuot. There we have it. And each one of these holidays, Pesach and Shavuot and Sukkot, are all related to what important aspect of our life in its connection to nature? Harvest. Very good. Very good. So what do we harvest typically at Sukkot time? What? Apples. Thank you. Or, yes. Gourds? Yes, gourds. Grapes. Cash crops. Let's think about things you make a lot of money. Wheat. Figs. Things that require you to go out in the field to pick them. Dates. Barley. I think barley is Shavuot. But you were close. You were in the ballpark. It's all good. Oh, because you're thinking Oktoberfest. Very good. How about olives? Olive oil? So some very important crops are connected to Sukkot. Sukkot is such an important holiday. I'm not going to say it's more important, but it's more important than Passover and Shavuot if you're a farmer, in that the real cash crops, the crops that you make money on, wine, olive oil, those are now. It's also, since it's right after Yom Kippur and right after Rosh Hashanah Yom Kippur, there are all these correlations between how well or not so well you did at repenting and what your crops are going to look like. So you don't want it to do what before Sukkot's ended? What do you not want? Rain. Because if it rains a lot or too much, your crops could get spoiled. They can get all kinds of spores and yuckiness. And so I guess the rabbis thought if you didn't do such a good job repenting, your crops will get ruined, your wine will get ruined, and that will just be God's way of telling you, try again. So these are some of the main crops, and Sukkot's also, we know, so important because there was 2 years when Sukkot couldn't be celebrated in around the 2nd century before the Common Era. It was when you remember the Hanukkah story? All those bad guys came in and ruined the temple and made a mess of the temple. Well, I have good news and bad news. Close your ears if you don't want me to do a spoiler alert. Hanukkah was not Hanukkah until about 500 years after Hanukkah took place. Hanukkah was really a re-celebration of Sukkot in Kislev in December. That's why it's 8 days long, and I just want to throw that out there. Hanukkah, the whole thing with the cruse of oil, that's made up in the Talmud about 500, 600 years after the event took place. The actual first Hanukkah, and we have records of this in not only in Bible, but in the book of Maccabees, and also later on in some of the other philosophers and people who were sort of historians at the time. Hanukkah was totally made up. Actually in a part of the Talmud, Rabbi, do you remember where it appears in the Talmud? And what Masechet? Because, I'm going to point here, it's in the Masechet, in the portion about Shabbat, and about candles and Shabbat, that the rabbis say, Mai Hanukkah, what is Hanukkah? Oh, and then they make up the story about the 8 days and the cruse of oil and all, 600 years later. Sorry, didn't mean to ruin it for you. I know, it's upsetting. All right, back to Sukkot. What are the, The good news is you know now what Hanukkah really was, and I told you, this is the Jewish equivalent of there is no Santa Claus, what I just told you. But in Trivial Pursuit or at a cocktail party, if it should come up, you're the smartest one in the room now. And you could actually make someone cry. Who's here from Shira Malot in Irvine? Ish? Okay, so my good friend Rick Steinberg, when we were taught this in rabbinic school, 2nd year, 3rd year, whenever it was, stormed out of the class. He was so upset that they taught this. He was so mad that they lifted up the veil and shook. Yes, sir. You've raised your hand. That's very proper. Can we still get Hanukkah gifts? You can still get Hanukkah gifts, absolutely. What are the days in between the holiday of Sukkot on the first day and the holiday of Sukkot on the last day called? In Hebrew. Chol HaMoed. Chol HaMoed is an oxymoronic phrase that means a holiday that is not a holiday. Chol HaMoed means, Moed is a festival, Chol means profane, and so it's a profane holiday. It's a non-holiday holiday. Why? Because the rabbis didn't want people or expect people to not light lights or cook food for 7 full days. So they gave us the first, there are bookends, the first day and the 7th day are what are called Yontif or Yom Tov, holidays, and the middle days are Chol HaMoed. What's the 8th day of Sukkot called? Shemini Atzeret. What's the 7th day of Sukkot called? 6th day of Sukkot called? What? It sounds like Hoshana Rabbah. The 6th day of Sukkot is called Hoshana Rabbah. By the way, remember we said the gates closed and the book closed on it? No, the rabbis say actually the book and the gates don't close until Hoshana Rabbah, until the 6th day of Sukkot. So you still have a few days to get your apologies in. Why? Why not? That's a good rabbinic answer to I don't really know why. Because the rabbis thought that you should, have a kicker, if you will, after Yom Kippur, lest you think you can go back and misbehave. It's a very pragmatic reason, by the way. I always think, what do? We fast for 24 hours, we get in the car, we go out in the parking lot, we honk at someone who cuts us off, right? And yell at someone, we go right back to where we were. The rabbis wanted to give us a little bit of a period of time to not lose it quite yet. It's the behavior that you with which you conducted yourself on Yom Kippur you should do for a full week. God forbid, right? And then, all right. What is on a sukkah? Just a couple more questions here. What are the minimum amount of walls that you need to have on a sukkah? Jonathan says 3. Yeah, what did you say? 2? 3? You can have 2 and 1 attached to them. How many people think 3? These are walls that are solid. One person thinks 3. No, most of you would probably say 3, right? And we think it's 3. But you're right, it's 2+. The rabbis, do you remember in the Talmud, it's kind of funny. They had a good sense of humor. What did they say could be that sort of third wall? What kind of material could you use? They actually said, there's a funny comment in the Talmud, that you could actually, if you could get it to sit, you could park an elephant as, and this is just symbolic of, this temporary third wall. So they kind of said 2.5. 2 walls plus something that's temporary. We use those mesh things out in the courtyard because they're much cheaper to make, and that's what the sukkahproject.com mailed us. So, can you have a sukkah inside your house, by the way? Yes, you can have a sukkah inside your house, only if you happen to have a retractable roof in one of your bedrooms. If you have, go ahead, what? In Williamsburg. Nice. So only in Brooklyn? Only in Brooklyn? You know Brooklyn. So there are some communities where the room that you get married in, the house that you get married in, the room that you get, or the place where you get married, can have, it's not really a retractable roof, it's really not a roof. But sometimes there is a roof, and they're made up of basically the drywall. The drywall, if it's removed and you put schach covering on it, then you can have a sukkah in your house. So it would have to be top floor if it's a one-floor room with maybe some drywall ceiling on it. Remember, these people our ancestors lived in huts. They lived in temporary structures, and if they had a permanent structure, it didn't have drywall with nails and paint and what are they called, the things around, the bordering around. I mean, they lived in things that had removables. So yes, you can. Last thing, we will, beginning Sunday, not Sunday, but let's say next Shabbat when everyone comes back for services again, we will take out the line Morid Hatal before the Givrot prayer, which is about letting the dew ascend, and insert Mashiv Haruach Umorid Hagashem, that the cloud should stir up and there should be rain. Now there's some discrepancy and argument in the Talmud about, does that only really apply to the land of Israel? Like, are we praying just for rain in the land of Israel? Remember, this is all very connected to agriculture. Or are we praying for rain everywhere? So if you remember, Union Prayer Book and Gates of Prayer in the Reform movement did not insert Mashiv HaRuach or Morid Hatal before the Givrot. Why? Because they felt like, remember, the original Reform movement was anti-Zionist because they were anti-nationalism. So they didn't believe in delineating prayers for Israel. That is special for Israel, so that it was out of there. And then on a theological level, the rabbis who were on the committee, and I don't know if there were any cantors for Gates of Prayer, didn't put it in. And the new prayer book has it in, with the understanding that as environmentally conscientious people, we want it to rain in its season no matter where we live. So while while halachically the prayer for rain is only for Israel, is only for it to rain in Israel so that there's fruit in its season and all that kind of stuff, so that we can celebrate something at Passover, of course we need the rain here. So what I'm saying is that as a movement, we made the determination to reinsert it into Mishkan Tefillah, because raining in its season in places that are drought-prone especially, like Arizona, like California, is something that we should pray for. And as my father and grandfather and probably many generations before, would say, it couldn't hurt to ask. What's the downside, right? So that will be included starting next Shabbat, but really during Sukkot. Those are a little bit of my trivial pursuits for Sukkot. What's most important, from my perspective, is the Zman Simchatenu aspect, the time of our rejoicing. We have worked very, very hard during Rosh Hashanah, Yom Kippur, the 10 days of repentance. For many, during Sukkot, the entire month of Elul leading up to it. We prayed our kishkas out. We heard the beautiful, sometimes even ancient music, and all of the music, as Cantor Edinger presented it to us, this beautiful, powerful music of our tradition. We sat in shul. We read a lot of responsive readings. And now it's time to party. There's no better way of putting it. This is the most fun time of the year. So while there is some exhaustion physically, spiritually, emotionally from the days of awe, I encourage you. It's always baffles me why people we should have as many people showing up for Sukkot and Simchat Torah. We want to show up for this, but we should show up for this, right? So please join us for Sukkot, for Simchat Torah, for the fun part, the fun holidays, the joyous holidays, starting again this Sunday. And if you have the opportunity, come out to the sukkah. Call the office and say, hey, we're going to bring the family. We're going to have dinner in the sukkah. I know not everyone can build a sukkah. You're welcome to use our sukkah. If you want to have a meal with your family in the sukkah, just give us a call. I say that because our executive director is here and I want it to sound formal. Just show up. If you want to bring your family and bring some dinner and a picnic, go out to the sukkah. Call the office if you want us to set up a table and chairs for you. We're happy to do that. I didn't not let you build it. I had nothing to do with it. But because I like to be accountable, Sam, I'm not letting you go up on a ladder any longer. I'm cutting you off at 96. Sam likes to climb the ladder and make us all nuts. And he does it well. But we did not have the Mensch Night Out crew build the sukkah. And again, forgive me, I'm sorry. But that's Ian's fault. So yell at him. All right, Shabbat Shalom, everyone. Please have